All right. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone who has joined us from different locations. Welcome to Kony Visualizer Build and Configurations webinar. My name is Tanmay, and in today's session, we are going to cover types of builds Kony Visualizer supports and configuring your application to generate native web binaries using the Visualizer builds. To cover this topic, we have with us today experts Piyush and Mallikarjun from Kony. So before we start the session, let me inform you that in case if you have questions during the session, you can put it up in the Q&A panel, and we have experts monitoring the Q&A panel. They will answer your questions as and when that is possible. And also, you can please do not use the chat box because no one is monitoring that. So Q&A panel is the ideal one that you can post your questions. Also, we are recording this webinar and we'll be posting it in the articles section. So make sure that you can share it after the session is over. You can share the recording with your friends, peers, colleagues in case they're not available today. We also have a couple of polls that we'll run during the event. So make sure you participate and cast your votes, and this way you can also contribute to the webinar. So let's start the session. I will like to invite Piyush to take over and start the session. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Piyush from Kony Visualizer team. So I'll be starting the session now. Want to share your screen? Yeah. Okay. I'll be starting with Visualizer build configurations. So the agenda for today's webinar is to cover the Visualizer Enterprise builds, the type of builds that Kony Visualizer Enterprise offers, the certain build configurations that are required to generate native and web binaries, and the types of binaries that you can generate through Visualizer: debug mode binaries, release mode binaries, and protected mode binaries. Additionally, we'll be covering how to generate IPA for iOS channel right from Visualizer end to end. And we'll be talking in detail about Visualizer continuous integration build, which is the Node.js based headless build system using which you can generate binaries post your development is complete to integrate continuous integration. And at last, we'll be talking about things to come in V8 SP4 and beyond. So I'll be starting with the Visualizer Enterprise builds. So mainly Visualizer Enterprise supports three different kind of builds today in V8 onwards. So the first one is preview build. So preview is a feature using which user can build and test their application at the development time and quickly view it for changes that are being done at the development time, right? So for preview build, user does not need any prerequisite to be installed on the system like Xcode for iOS or Android SDK for Windows. And using preview is the most fastest way to test the changes at as the build generation is pretty fast, as it does not require to generate IPAs or APK, the final binaries for individual channels, right? The second build type is what we call full build, using which you can generate the binaries and install it on your device or emulators for native channels. And for web channels, either you can deploy your web channel locally on Visualizer itself, or you can publish it to Kony Fabric runtime and access it through that, right? So user can use full build for this. And the third build type that is CI continuous integration build. This build generally comes into the picture once you are complete with your project development and you want to continuously test the output binaries which gets generated, right? So mainly this will be pretty useful in automating your Kony applications once post the development phase. So you can continuously build the applications in headless way and keep testing it using the test frameworks. So I'll start with the first build type in brief. Yeah. So Visualizer Enterprise supports preview for native channels, and for web channels, Visualizer the web channels, the support has been added from SP4 onwards, right? So as you can see on the right side, there is the configure channels pop-up through which user can select individual channels for which they want to do the preview build. And the environment here is the Kony Fabric environment to which your services might be published, and the preview mode debug or release would be the mode in which you want to build your preview app. So SP4 onwards, you can actually debug your preview app if it is built on preview mode. So I'll come back to that shortly. So okay, so I'll just quickly show you these options on Visualizer. So we have this preview menu item on Visualizer using which you can configure the channels that you want to build for. So I'll be just quickly building it for say iOS. You can see the progress manager here which is showing. So on completion of preview, users sees this pop-up where you can download the app viewer app from App Store or Play Store and install it on your device or emulator. So I'll be just quickly showing you the QR code through which you can scan this app directly on your phone and install it, or you can actually go to the iTunes and install it. So what I have done here right now is I have already launched the preview app on my emulator, and since there is only one device connected right now, it automatically shows green. I can just simply say launch and it will be showing me the app right away. So my first form is form login, right, and I can see it right away on the screen. So say I just want to make an additional change where I just change the color of this button and I want to see how does it. Sorry. Okay, I changed the border, so I'll just change the color of the button. I just want to see how does it look. So what I'll do is I'll just say preview run and I'll just check my emulator for the changes, and so it auto refreshes with the changes. So it's as simple as that. So this is how user can just keep doing the changes and the preview will auto refresh. The same feature is available on Android as well, through which you can build and continuously test your application, right? Yeah. So for web channels, the preview has been added in SP4 only. So I'll just quickly walk through one of the web channel also. For that, I'll be just creating a new sample project. So I'll be just putting a simple button, that's it, and what I'll do is I'll just configure my channels to be SP iPhone and I'll just say save and run, right? So this preview build just builds the app locally and launches it on your simulator. Okay. Okay, it has paused in debugger because I built it in debug mode. I'll just, so here for web channel you can see there is a Chrome debugger view where user can debug the app instantly. So this is a new feature in SP4 which you can download SP4 when it releases towards first week of Feb, right? And yeah, so this is the web preview for enterprise. Yeah. So I'll be continuing with this. Like I said, preview build supports delta code generation, which makes it really fast. So I just do a change, and it in seconds that change gets reflected on the device. So we recommend preview build at the development time, where you don't need to generate the binary and launch it on the device end to end to see your changes. Once you are done with your changes, and if you want to generate the binaries to distribute among developers, you can go with the full build option, right? So I'll be covering the Visualizer Enterprise full build now. Using user can build and deploy web applications to Kony Fabric server through Visualizer Enterprise. For this, to deploy the web application on Kony Fabric server, user needs access to either Kony Cloud or Kony on-premise to be installed on one of the systems, and you can log into Kony Cloud or Kony on-premise and then build the web application and launch it end to end, right? If you don't want to deploy the web app on Kony server, you can still test it locally. You can just build a web app and just launch it locally and keep testing it. So for web application, there is not much difference between previewing a web app versus building the full app locally, because both of them do the same thing, except you can actually build the release mode application only through full build, where your JavaScript code gets completely minified, and you cannot actually make sense out of it if it is built in release mode. For native binaries generation through full build, there are certain prerequisites which are mandatory to build apps. So Xcode is mandatory for iOS channel. So if you have installed Visualizer on a Windows box, you need to point it to a Mac configuration which has Xcode installed. If you are on a Mac box, Xcode will be installed by default. And if you want to generate end-to-end IP and not just launch the app on emulator, if you want an IP out of it, you need proper iOS developer profiles and certificates, which needs to be configured in your Xcode. For Android, all you need is Android SDK to be installed on your Windows or Mac OS to build an Android APK, which can be installed on device. And for Windows, you need Windows development tools to be installed on your Windows box. So Visualizer Enterprise does not support building of Windows phone or tablet binaries on a Mac box due to the dependencies on the Windows OS, right? So Windows development tools are mandatory for this. And Visualizer supports generation of 3 types of binaries: debug mode binary, which is useful to debug your application code end to end; release mode binary, which minifies your code, and you can add additional security for the release mode binaries if you want to build on release protected mode. So I'll go in detail around these 3 options. Before that, I'll just show you the platform selection screen that you generally see. So product menu has these different options where you can perform the full build. So these are the channels supported by Visualizer Enterprise for the full build. Under native, you have iOS, Android, BlackBerry, Windows channels, x86 and ARM. Under tablet, it's again iOS, Android, Windows 8.x tablet and Windows 10 tablet. And under desktop web, you have responsive web, which is web only channel, and we have desktop Windows, which is Windows native app. If you see, this Windows options are disabled because I am on a Mac machine and I cannot build this. Then in addition to this, we do support Apple Watch and Android Wear as channels. I'll not be talking in detail about wearables in this session due to the lack of time, but based on the request, we can take this up in future sessions. And as I said, these are the build modes: debug and release, which user can select before building the binary, right? And to build the protected mode binary, there are additional settings which I'll go through in detail. Yeah. So Visualizer Enterprise debug mode binaries. Uh, to generate debug binaries, Visualizer does not need any development profiles or Android signing details because those can be launched locally on emulators and can be debugged. And this option, this build debug binaries can be generated using product build options. And if user wants to run the binaries on device or emulator directly, this needs to be configured using product emulators and devices configuration settings. I'll just walk through this. Once the device and emulator is configured, user can either use build and then launch the app, or you can use product run as option. And debug mode binaries can be used to debug application. So I'll not be covering debugging end to end in this session because you need you need to set up uh, certain prerequisites to debug, and it will take some time. So debug will be a separate session which we can cover in the upcoming sessions. So like I said, to configure a device or an emulator, product menu has emulators and devices configuration option. So this is under preferences, Kony Visualizer, emulators or devices. What I'll be doing is I'll be walking through one of the configured device, which is iPhone XR. So on Mac machine, user can directly see that Xcode currently selected Xcode is populated, and simulator version on my system is 12.1, and available device are this. So if I just say I want to create a new simulator, I'll see the available list of devices out of which I can configure one of them. If I open my existing this, only that simulator would be configured. Similarly, under devices, okay, so for I'll go through this selection for devices / iOS when I cover generate IPA. What I'll be doing right now is I'll be just opening a sample app, and I'll be just launching it end to end using the run as option. So as you can see, I can see the devices which I have configured, and I'll be just quickly building this application and launching it. So you can see the build progress in the progress manager under beside the console tab, and you can see the detailed logs here. So I have already built. It's launching the emulator. It says emulator has been launched, and this is the app. Yeah. I'll be covering the Android part soon. So coming to the release mode binaries, you cannot actually submit debug mode built binaries to App Store or Google Play Store. For those, the binaries needs to be generated in release mode, and release mode binaries cannot be debugged as application permissions set to be compliant with App Store or Play Store guidelines. Android manifest entries are modified to make it compatible with the Google Play Store, and it does not have certain permission for which for for debugging those permissions are required. And for web applications built in release mode, application JS code would be minified, and that also cannot be debugged with certainty. And other things, that other restrictions are there, like Kony.print statements if you have used in your code, which shows generally the logs, which shows the statements in the logs, would not be printed for release mode binaries. And Kony Visualizer optimizes the final binary build for release mode, and it takes a slightly higher time to generate the binary, and it does not emit any symbolic debug information, and it will be smaller in size than a debug binary due to the uh, minification of code and removing some of the capabilities. So like I said, to build a binary in release mode, this is the setting. You just need to change it to release, and that's all. Right? I'll just walk you through the project settings for iOS and Android. Different project settings for the full build, which are supported. So under the common, you have the app name, which actually shows when you install the app on the device, and the app logo, which can be configured here. Under iPhone, we have bundle identifier and bundle version. Bundle identifier is something which needs to be same as what you can configure for your development profile, right? So you need to register this bundle identifier against the development profile that you are using if you want to generate the end-to-end IPA, right? Then there is the bundle version, which is the versioning of your app. So if you have already submitted one version of the app to the App Store, you need to bump up the bundle version. And to build the release protected binary, user need to check this protected mode option. Then only visualizer will generate the release protected binaries. Similarly, if you want to target for a particular iOS version, you can select this. If you are building for wearable, you can select the watchOS version, and Swift version in case of this is only watch specific. Similarly, with Xcode 8 and above, App Store has given this submission guidelines where you can give different icons for the App Store, so those can be configured here. Okay, so these are the main settings which concerns the full build. And similarly for Android, we have the package name, which is your application name when you install the app on the device. Version code again refers to similar thing. If you have already submitted one version to the Play Store, you need to bump up the version before you build the release binary. Then the target SDK versions that you want to build your binary for, a minimum version. So there would be some features that you would be using in your app which are not supported beyond some Android version. So you can set those restrictions here. And these are the target SDK version and max SDK version. Similarly, to build release protected binaries, protected mode option can be enabled for Android through here. So Visualizer Enterprise only supports protected mode binaries for iOS and Android. The support is not there for Windows or web channels. Similarly, you can explore this other settings like support for x86 devices, which increases your final debug final binary size, and these are need basis settings which user can configure, right? And the app permissions can be configured here based on the functionalities being used in your Kony application. You can add or remove the app permissions. The signing details, so if you want to, so by default any application that you build for Android on Visualizer gets signed with the default certificate which comes with Android SDK tools. But if you want to distribute the binary or upload it to the Play Store, you have to sign it with your own key store credentials. So you need to give your key store file, key store password, and key alias and key password. So these are mandatory if you want to actually upload the binary to the Google Play Store. So this is for the release mode binaries. These are the settings or configurations, and I'll just walk you through the protected mode binary. Okay. Am I audible now? Am I audible now? Yeah. Uh, okay. So for the protected mode binary, so Kony offers additional security for your Kony visualizer generated binaries. And if you build your binaries in protected mode, you can protect your application by detecting attacks like tampering, swizzling, debugging, or jailbreaking for iOS, or routing for Android. And only release mode binaries can be built in protected mode. So for protecting the binaries using protected mode, you need to actually generate uh, public and private keys using OpenSSL. I'll just quickly walk you through the or steps of generating or obtaining this public and private keys. So once user generates a public key using OpenSSL, you need to send these keys to Kony at licensing.kony.com. What Kony security team will do is will check the public key and it will encrypt it and give it back to the user to put under the application. So you can create a folder called encryption key underscore underscore encryption keys and put that public key along with private key. So the private key generated by the user stays with the user. It should not be shared either with Kony or anybody. Private key, in case of somehow compromise on the private key, you can regenerate the private key, but this is something which should not be shared with Kony or anybody else. So you can just put this private key along with the public key in your project directory, and then you can select the protected mode option under project settings, native, iPhone or Android, and then you can build the application in the release mode. So I'll just quickly walk you through the documentation of the same. I have embedded the link to this documentation here. I'll be just going to the specific section. You can check out this link for more information. So like I said, tamper protection, jailbreak or swizzling detection, anti-debugging, these are the things which can be which you can protect your application from. Yeah, so these are the steps, detailed steps to generate RSA key pair generation, public private key. So you have to install either git bash or cygwin terminal on Windows, and you can just uh, type this command OpenSSL generate RSA out private key.pm, and this is the 2048-bit encryption. This public key can be sent. Okay, so you can extract the public key from the same pair using this command, and you can verify these keys by executing less command to see that it starts with private key versus public key. Send these keys to licensing.kony.com. Our team will validate and encrypt your public key. Do not share the private key with Kony or anybody else. And again, this keys needs to be placed into encryption keys folder. And this after that you can build your application by checking the protected mode. So you can just go through this detailed documentation on building release protected binaries. And I have already walked through this additional settings to select the target version for iOS, and to select min, max and target SDK versions for Android. Additionally, the other settings like I mentioned, app icons for iOS, Android manifest entries, Android signing details can be configured through project settings native tab. And for debug mode, as I mentioned, Visualizer auto signs the binary with default key store file. So what I'll do is I'll just skip one slide to show you the build for Android, and I'll go back to the previous slide. So like I said, I'll be configuring the target SDK as 8.0 and minimum as 4.4. So I'll be building the Android binary first. So SP3 onwards, we have this built-in background feature. If you are on previous version of Visualizer, we actually unblock the user to use Visualizer while build goes on in the background. So okay, I'll just pause it here. Once your build is completed, you can actually once your build is completed, you can click on the mobile node, and you can open the build folder by right clicking on the mobile node to get the location of the binary. So under the build folder, you can go to Lua Android, dist, and you will find the so you can find the binary under dist folder. To launch this binary, what I'll be doing is I'll be configuring a device. So I already had connected the device. So if once you connect your device through USB, you can refresh the list and the device will show up. I have projected my Android device. So it's installing the app on the device, and it will launch. Visualizer will auto launch the app on the device. So the app is installed. Since I had built it in debug mode, you'll see that pop up first, and that's it. Okay. So this is for the Android. I already showed how do you launch an app for iPhone. So what we'll do is we'll directly go to the part where we generate the end output for iOS platforms. So IPA is the file which gets generated for iOS. To generate IPA for iOS, you need Xcode on your Mac box, and you need your development profiles to be configured with that particular Xcode, and keychain password, development method, and development team ID needs to be configured in Visualizer preferences. So I'll just quickly walk you through the preferences for generating an IPA. So you go to your emulators and devices configuration, you go to your devices, so you can just configure one device. Yeah, so it automatically fetches the Xcode details. You can select your development method, you can provide your keychain password and development team ID, which would be associated with your development profile, and save the device. Once you have saved the device, you can use product build option to generate Kony AppPlatform.car. Car stands for Kony archive. So this is an intermediate file for iOS where you can generate this car file on any OS, Windows box or Mac box. Then you can take this Kony archive to a Mac box and generate the IPA out of it, or you can use Visualizer to generate IPA in one shot. So you can use run as the device configured name and generate IPA option to generate the IPA. So I'll just quickly show you how do we configure it with the. So I'll go to preferences. I'll just repeat the same step. IPA test. So I have configured keychain password and development team ID. I'll just say OK. And in project settings, I'll just try to set the target version for my IPA. Like I said, this bundle identifier has to be the one which is registered with your development profile. So I'll be just changing that, and I'll be selecting a target listing. So you can build the application first. So to generate the IPA, you need to at least build the application once so that the Kony archive gets generated. So now the code generation is happening in the backend. If this takes time, right, user can actually use Visualizer to do other tasks while the build is in progress. So first time build of iOS takes significant time, 4 to 5 minutes, during which we don't want to block the user. So this is the option, product run as my configured device, and you will get generate IPA. So you can ignore the second option, generate IPA CI. That is a beta feature which is not released yet. So you will only see the generate IP option. So you can use the generate IP option, and what Visualizer will do is Visualizer will build your application using the Xcode which is there on your system, and give you the final signed output. So you'll see that IPA generation is successful. So again, we open the build folder from the mobile section on your Project Explorer, and you can go to build server, and instead of so you will see a folder called iPhone KBF, which stands for iPhone Kony binary files. So under that you will see that employee directory native.ipa is available. So you can install this IPA on devices which are registered against your development profile. This IPA cannot be installed on any iOS, just any other iOS devices, because if you build it through development method as development, you cannot distribute that binary. So it needs to be installed on devices which are registered against your development certificates. So this is the Kony app archive, which is the intermediate artifact that we generate before generating the final IPA. Yeah, so this is all for the full build. You can explore these features in detail, and any queries you can just post on the Basecamp, and I'll be the first one to reply. So we'll be moving towards Visualizer continuous integration build. So we call it CI build here. So CI build is a Node.js based headless build which generates the binaries for native channels without Visualizer being installed on the system. So you actually don't need to install Visualizer on your system to build the binaries. So prerequisites for CI build are: you need Node.js to be installed on your system, you need Ant to be installed on your system, Java if you are planning to build for Android or web channels, and Kony plugins. So bare minimum you need Kony plugins against which you want to build your binary. So say your development was done against a particular version of Visualizer, say V8 SP3. So you just pick up the plugins from your plugins directory and you can use those plugins. You can dump those plugins into any one of the folder on your build system, and you don't actually need Visualizer to build after that. The main advantage of CI build is it can be run in parallel on a system, making it efficient and fast. So you can actually trigger multiple CI builds on the same system for different channels, and you will get the output binaries right away. And more on how to invoke CI build can be found here. So this is the hyperlink to the CI build documentation, which I'll just quickly open, but I'll not go through it in detail. You can actually use this documentation to build your Visualizer Enterprise or starter application using CI build. So you can see there are two sections: continuous integration for enterprise and continuous integration for starter. So your Visualizer starter project which can only be previewed till SP4, can now be built using CI build by following these steps. So you can actually get a binary out of a starter project by following these steps. So you can just go through the documentation. What I will do is I'll just go through the sample files which are required to do the CI build. So the configuration for CI build can be done through a file called headless build.properties, which is there in your project. What I'll do is I'll quickly open the sample file that I have, and so this is a news and weather app which I have put. There are certain build modes, whether you want to just build your binary or you want to publish to Fabric or you want to build and publish. So there are these build modes which are supported. You can ignore build mode 2, 3 and 4. This is my development file, so I have put it there, but it's only build modes which are supported through Visualizer are 0, 1 and 2. Yeah. So you can ignore the 3 and 4 basically. Then build mode is your release and debug binary, which you can mention whether you want to build a release binary or debug binary. Similarly, app ID. Generate native library is a feature which was introduced in SP3. We can cover this based on the interest in one of our upcoming sessions if required. Again, there are certain properties which you can configure. So the login to Kony Cloud or Kony on-premise is mandatory to do the CI build. So you need to give your username, password, and URL. If you don't want to give your username and password, there is an alternate way of giving a Fabric token, which you can get by logging to Kony Fabric using your user ID and password. But this token will be valid for only 15 to 20 minutes. So you can actually get this token in your automation machine by making an API call and use this token instead of providing user ID and password. Similarly, if your app needs Fabric integration where your Fabric app is connected to your development app, you can provide the details of app and version here, and you can select your app platform for which you want to build, iPhone or Android. I'll just turn Android false for now, and SPA channel. So you can select these channels in this file. Then you can give your deployment targets that we selected in UI. So if you want to change your deployment target headless, you can give the deployment target here. Similarly, Swift version. And if you are building on a Windows box and if you want to connect to a Mac machine to generate the build, you can provide your IP address, username and password here. Similarly, the keychain, password, development team ID and development method that we provided in the UI can be provided through this file also in the CI mode. If you want to generate IPA, then you just need to set gen IPA true for iPhone and for iPad. Similarly, you need to provide the plugins directory where you have dumped your plugins. You have to give Java location and you have to give Android location. If you are building for Android, you have to give the Android home. So these are the mandatory things which are required to generate the to trigger the CI build. Okay. Apart from this, there are two files which needs to be put into your project. One is called build.js, which is the CI build generation script, and there is something called package.json, which installs the required node modules for the CI build. These two files can be found on community.kony.com. If you go to download section on community.kony.com, you can download the CI build tool. I'll just open that. Okay. Okay, I'm not able to find the link to the build tool. I'll share it post this session. But there is a CI build tool file which gives you this package.json and uh, this build.json. So these are the two prerequisites apart from the Java JDK and all. So all you need to do is you need to go to your project location and execute node build.js command if you have provided all the correct details here, right? All you need to do is just node build.js and it will build your binaries headless in the CI mode. If you see the logging for the CI build is much more organized than our previous traditional headless build, and these are the results. The build is completed. The binaries can be found in this location. So I'll just quickly open this location and I can see that I have got this intermediate archive here. What I'll do is I'll just clear this and I'll quickly change this to false and I'll just try to build for Android. So this command can be executed through any shell script by going to that directory and executing the command, and this can be used in your Jenkins automation or continuous integration system that you are using. All this can be invoked through command line and the output will be in the binaries folder of the project. Yeah, so the build is completed and binaries, so I can see that Android binary has been generated here. So this is for the CI build. You can actually go through the documentation in detail to explore this feature. And I just yeah, so this is the download location for the CI build tool, which is documented. You can actually download this tool from download.kony.com, Visualizer Enterprise CI tools, and the version. So if your fixed pack version is SP4, you can just replace this 808 with 8.4.0 and you can download the CI tool from there. So this is for the CI build. Any questions on the CI build, you can drop a note and we'll be glad to answer. So this is the futuristic build system that Visualizer is going to use more and more to generate the binaries, and it is pretty fast and it can be run in parallel, which makes it the efficient option out of all three. So now I'll just move on to what is coming in V8 SP4 and above. So this will be from the build perspective only that I'll be mentioning V8 SP4. So V8 SP4 is a feature packed release where you will be able to do much more using Visualizer Starter. So we have focused more on Visualizer Starter and making it more capable compared to Enterprise. So Visualizer Starter till now, till V8 SP3, all you can do is preview an application end-to-end using AppViewer. Visualizer Starter SP3 does not have capability to build binaries end-to-end, but V8 SP4 onwards we are coming up with capability to build and publish native and web applications end-to-end without any dependencies on the local system. Yeah, you heard it right. You don't need Xcode, you don't need Android SDK to build binaries. All you need is access to our upcoming Kony build service, through which you can build applications on Kony Cloud right from your Visualizer Starter. And we'll have build, run and debug capabilities on your devices in Visualizer Starter. So this Kony build service will be announced as part of our SP4 release shortly. Stay tuned for those updates, and that's it. You don't need Xcode, you don't need Android SDK on your system to be installed to build binaries anymore. Yeah, so that is something to be excited about. Uh, that's all from me. Any queries you can post on the article or a Basecamp query, and I'll be happy to answer the same. Uh, Handing over to Tanmay for closing.
Can you please right click on my name and pass the ball to the presenter?
All right, so Piyush, thank you so much for this session. It was indeed a very good session with a lot of content, a lot of value you have added to the webinar today, and of course the walkthrough, this not just the slides, but also the walkthrough of Visualizer and many things that people really love. People really love to see hands-on experience, and that's what you've shared today. So I'm glad, and thank you again, once again, for also giving the audience a little hint about what we are coming with SP4. And just to tell you that we will definitely be doing a full-fledged webinar on SP4 very soon. And you will get the updates on Basecamp. For now, the information is not there, but we'll certainly be posting the webinar details, and then you can read about it. And don't forget to register, because by doing that, you get a notification and you get to know that when that is happening. Now, if you still have questions, so we are still here for a few minutes. Feel free to post questions in the Q&A panel. We have Mallikarjun, answering it. And in case if you don't have any questions right now, feel free to post them on Basecamp. We have very active forum available on Basecamp, so make sure you post your questions over there. We do get a lot of questions from you guys, so in case if you have questions later, feel free to post it there, and we'll have Piyush and other experts answering those questions as and when that is possible. If you see the screen right now, we have Kony Knowledge Week coming up on February 18th till 22nd. So that week is a blogathon that we are doing, and in case if you are interested, you can participate. It is open for all our customers, users, and partners. You guys can blog about it, and if you have anything to share, any pro tips or practices that you want to share with developers, you can do that. And then we also have gift cards to give away, so make sure you participate. And then I'll take you to a different slide. So you can join our Facebook group where we post about webinars and other things. So make sure that you be part of this group, and you get normal updates as and when we post any update on the Facebook group. We have a YouTube channel, which is a playlist where we also post webinar recordings. So in case if you want to hear it again or want to share it with others, follow this YouTube channel playlist, and you will see the recorded webinars over there as well. And we do a lot of tweets, of course, on Twitter. So follow the hashtag and get news about Basecamp. And the next webinar will be on February 19th, which is a fireside chat about real-world hands-on PWA app development. So make sure you register. Right now the information is not there, but follow the basecamp.kony.com/s/events, this link that you see on the page right now on the screen. So make sure you keep a tab on this page, and we will post about this webinar in detail. The registration link is already there, but we'll put more information about this. So make sure that you register for this webinar as well. So I think there are a couple of questions, but we're going to answer it later because our experts are answering it, and we are still here for a few more minutes. In case if you don't get any answer right now, expect an answer in the same article where we are going to post the recording as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining the session today. It was a great session. We hope to see you again in our next webinars. Thank you.